Hi, everyone. Hope everybody's having a good week. I am really busy over here because I have to give this big talk tomorrow. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the talk and then catch you up to speed on some other lab announcements. So the talk I'm giving tomorrow is so CASBIS, the center I'm at, picks three fellows to pick to give these public talks, and there's a lot of people from Silicon Valley and people that are potential donors to the center. And so they make it kind of like this fancy event with there's like appetizers and wine and official RSVPs, and then the talk, and then a smaller dinner with, I'm guessing, probably like donors or potential donors. I was going back and forth on what to present, and I was going to do the big review paper that we have in press, or yeah, I think it's still in press on why some STEM fields are more gender balanced than others. But I actually decided that because this is kind of a general audience and it's kind of a almost feels like a commercial or something, I decided that it would be probably best to go back to the older research and the stuff that I think people are most interested in, especially people in Silicon Valley, on the power of environments in shaping who's in the field. So I ended up going back and writing slides for that talk, drawing on a lot of some of the older talks that I've given. So I think that should go well. I've given a version of that talk so many times, but it is always like a new experience whenever there's a new audience and whenever there's when other people are making a bigger deal out of your talk than you think they should. But I think there's 140 people who RSVP'd, which is way too many people for the space. So I think they're anticipating that a lot of people won't show up. But anyway, I'll let you know how that one goes. And it's always interesting to get questions from people in Silicon Valley because I feel like they kind of know what's happening right now, and so they might have an interesting perspective on these things. So other than that, that's the thing I'm working on the hardest today and also last week. But other than that, we all went to SPSP last week, which I think you'll hear a little bit more about today. But everybody from the lab who did presentations, I heard everything went really well, and I saw Linda's talk and saw Laura's poster, and both were really great. And people came up to me afterwards and told me that they heard really good things about the talks and the posters from my lab. So that was really nice to hear. So congrats on everybody who pulled off nice presentations at SPSP. The only other thing that's been going on that I wanted to share was there's a big paper that came out from a different lab, from Andre Simpion's lab at University of, or he actually just moved to NYU. He's at NYU now, on how 6-year-olds have gender stereotypes and about brilliance. Boys are more likely to say that boys are brilliant than girls are to say that. And yeah, so the gender difference is that girls are less likely to believe that girls are brilliant than boys think boys are brilliant. And I got a bunch of press calls actually the couple days before the paper is going to come out. I didn't even know about the paper. I had just happened to hear about it at SPSP from Allison, our postdoc, who asked me if I'd heard about it. I'm really glad she told me because I got all these press calls and they didn't even send the paper, so I wouldn't have even been able to read the paper. But because Allison had told me it was from Andre, I emailed him, asked him for a copy of the paper, and then I agreed to do some of the press calls. I said I would comment on it. And I went in, reading the paper thinking like, oh yeah, this is super important. It's really, shows kind of, that these stereotypes that you have to be really brilliant to go into some fields, how they can end up deterring women and girls away. But as I was reading the paper, I was like, oh, there's actually a different angle that you can take on this work. And I noticed that what actually was going on is that there is that gender gap, but girls were actually saying girls and boys were equally brilliant, and boys were saying that boys were more brilliant. So really it was the boys who were kind of being biased and the girls were not. And the paper and the press had been framed as saying that it's the girls that we need to change because they don't think girls can be brilliant, when really I made the point to the press that maybe we should think about changing the boys because they're the ones who are kind of being arrogant about their own gender, being more brilliant than girls. So I was like, oh, okay, now I have a little message for the press, and I ended up being interviewed by NPR and The Atlantic and another couple other places. And I looked at the press coverage after it came out, and it was really nice to see that everybody used it, and they actually ended their stories with with that point that maybe we should, think about who we need to change. We shouldn't just jump to assume that it's the girls that we need to change. So I was like, oh, that's really nice to be able to take that kind of perspective. And I also, because Andre is a friend of mine, I also emailed him before I did this, and I just said, here's what I'm going to say. Is it accurate? And he did push back against it a little bit, but he conceded that it was an accurate read of the paper. And so that was also me making sure that I wasn't saying anything that would be completely out of line or not based in the data. But anyway, I thought that was a good moment. And I actually got a lot of emails, not a lot, but like 3 or 4 emails from people. One of them said like amen in the subject line. A math professor actually emailed, and just and a couple other people just said, that point is so important and it's getting lost in a lot of the press coverage. So it was nice to be able to make that difference. So anyway, so that's pretty much it from my end. So I hope you all have a good meeting, and I will update you on how the talk goes next week. Okay, take care. Bye.